A Captain and a Madman. Fanfiction written by Raziel, Lord of Squirrels. Please note, to put things into perspective, this story takes place during the final seasons of The Next Generation, shortly after the episode Violations. The Doctor Who timeline places us right between the episode's closing time and the wedding of River Song, where the Doctor is still delaying his fateful encounter on the beach. Chapter 1. TNG 1. Captain's Log, Stardate 45442.7. We have brought the Yulians to Caldra 4 as scheduled, and where the local authorities will detain Jev until such time as he can be extradited to his own world. Though the past several days have been trying, it is a considerable relief that our actions will have prevented such incidents from occurring again. Counselor Troy seems to has recovered from her ordeal and has returned to active duty. Starfleet has ordered us to Alcheron 5 to assist in the establishment of shielding and medical supplies to protect the inhabitants from escalating activity from within their own sun's corona. Unfortunately, the shielding will not be able to protect a majority of the planet's biome, but it will secure the colonists until such time that Starfleet can assemble an evacuation fleet. Still, given the planet's numerous unique species of flora and fauna, the loss is all but instant. Captain Picard, report to the bridge. Computer, halt recording. Climbing to his feet, Captain Jean-Luc Picard tugged at his uniform jacket before stepping out of his ready room. The bridge crew was in a flurry of activity, but they didn't seem to be acting too urgently, nor did they seem to be very concerned. The only exception, ironically, seemed to be Data. Though the second officer always had excellent posture, his back seemed, if anything, stiffer than ever. Report, Mr. Data. Sensors are detecting an extremely high burst of chronoton particles, half a light year from our present position. Chronotons? A temporal disturbance? It is a possibility, sir, Data replied. Romulan cloaking devices have been known to produce chronoton particles, though not typically in this concentration. They were quite some distance from Romulan territory, but the possibility was nonetheless a sobering one. Few Federation ships patrolled these outer reaches, and if there was a ship out there, or even a fleet, they could get far without being noticed. On the other hand, if it was a temporal disturbance of some kind, well, the Enterprise had encountered more than a few, and they have yet to be positive experiences. Still, Data, Picard mumbled, resting his hand on the back of the ops chair. Our schedule. How stringent is it? The android paused for a half-second before replying. If we were to investigate, we could spend 2 hours at the target coordinates and still reach the colony on schedule. Any longer, and we would have to increase speed to compensate. Picard sighed for a moment, and then nodded briskly, striding back to his chair and taking a seat. Helm, lay in a course for the coordinates provided by Mr. Data. Aye, sir. Course laid in. Engage. It had been an interesting day so far. No, come on, sexy. The Doctor was currently imploring, frantically working the control console as the TARDIS bucked, whirled, and groaned. Oh, you can do this. Just a teensy-weensy little jumbo-sized spatial singularity sucked up a supernova into an abyss of temporal stasis. Come on, you've handled worse than your sleep. You and I, across the universe, we could do this together with inspirational theme music, and a sudden, vicious shake sent the Doctor flying. His breath blasted from his lungs as his stomach collided with the metal railing. Right! Hauling himself upright, the Doctor lunged back to the console. Plan positive reinforcement, not working. Plan kinetic impact. He gave the side of the console a sharp kick and yelped in pain. Ow! Not working either. All right, I can figure this out. Just cross the wires, carry the infinity, reevaluate my life choices, invest in religion. No, wait, I absolutely certainly have no idea how to get out of this. Come on! Silence want me dead, and they're going to be right cross if I miss the appointment. He gave the console another kick, and the TARDIS gave a long, low groan in response, as if every molecule of its structure were groaning all at once. One last titanic shake sent the Doctor tumbling head over heels, leaving him folded in a mess of limbs against one of the railings. And then suddenly, the turbulence stopped, the control room settling into the far more comfortable trebles of regular travel. Still sprawled on the floor, the Doctor gave a low, bruised chuckle. Ah, that's right. Take that, unbeatable quantum oblivion. Rolling over, the doctor hauled himself to his feet, chuckling as he brushed the arms of his jacket. But the chuckle died when he saw a single purple light shining on the console. Well, that's not good. That light's never been on before. What is that light? Tongues flicking across his lips, he gave a lever an experimental flip, nearly stumbling to one side as the control room gave a hard shake, the steady grinding of the time rotor beginning to fade. That's really not good. Oh, that's not good at all. The monitor began to flicker and blink with numerous symbols, flashing white neon triangles and subsequent green strobing twos. That's very, very not welcome. Really, no idea what it means. It was around then that the grind of the time rotor faded away altogether, the cloister bell announcing their arrival. And then a split second later, the lights flickered out. Every single one, plunging the control room into pitch blackness. The deep hum of the TARDIS died away, not even the faintest sound filling the air. The massive chamber became as still and as silent as a tomb. Abruptly left with no lights to see by and no idea where he left his screwdriver, the doctor really had only just one thing to say. Ooh, that's bad. Captain, we have arrived at the target coordinates, Data announced. Sensors are detecting a small object off the port bow. Take a shot of warp, Picard instructed, and bring us within 500,000 kilometers. Mr. Worf, raise shields. The hum of the Enterprise's warp drive faded to the low thrum of the impulse engines as they inched towards the strange object, keeping a safe distance just in case it proved, well, unfriendly. I am scanning the object, sir, Data announced, fingers dancing over the console. Beginning comparative analysis. Picard nodded, shifted in his seat a little, and glanced towards Riker. I just hope we gain some answers before. I have identified the object, sir. Picard's mouth hung open mid-word for a long moment. Well, that was even faster than usual, Commander. I cannot take the credit, sir, Data confessed, blinking down at the controls. The object appears to have English script on its surface that greatly narrowed the search. In addition, its dimensions and design closely mirror that of a structure commonly used in the mid-20th century by law enforcement of Britain, Earth. The most common term is police box. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Data, Picard muttered. This isn't an attempt to develop a sense of humor, is it? No, sir, Data replied. I am putting the object on the screen now. A split second later, there it was. Big blue. It even had the words police box written across it, and though they normally looked like they were supposed to light up, the letters were currently dark. The entire object was, in fact, once more, that confused, stunned silence settled on the crew, as everyone tried to come up with some logical explanation to, well, explain that. We're over 500 light years from Earth, Riker muttered. Even if that thing was able to break free of Sol's gravity, there's no way it could drift out this far. And even before being brought in with any sort of warp velocity, not in just 4 centuries. Mr. Data, Picard asked, is it possible that this object may have been transported by some form of spatial disturbance, an errant bit of jetsam, as it were? Data paused for a moment before replying. It is possible, sir. It would explain the unusual chronoton readings we detected at this location. Picard and Riker both relaxed a bit. Things seemed to be making a bit more sense. This wouldn't be the first time we've seen temporal disturbances, Riker pointed out, drawing in a low, slow breath. It could be that somewhere back in the 20th century, a police box just went missing for no particular reason. Maybe something snatched it up and deposited it out here. Natural occurrence, even? Yes. But why? And by what? Picard mused. What could have done that so cleanly, with no surrounding debris or other matter brought along? Why just one police box? Captain, both officers turned to Ops, where Data was sitting, if anything, even straighter than usual, a sure sign that he had found something of particular interest. I have managed to compensate for the interference, Data explained, frowning for him, as he studied the readings. I am detecting what I believe that may be a life form. A life form? Riker echoed. Inside of a wooden box in the middle of space? Yes, sir. I am detecting no power emanations from the object, but I believe there is a living person aboard. The readings are strong, with no evidence that the life form is in any danger. Picard hesitated for a moment, moving back to his chair before turning to the view screen. Could we beam the occupant aboard? I would not recommend it, sir, Data replied, the sort of frown deepening. The spatial distortions make it extremely difficult to establish an accurate sensor lock. Attempting to beam someone from within, or even transport something aboard, would be extremely hazardous. There was another long pause as they considered the mystery. Picard wasn't inclined to try to bring the object aboard just yet, not without at least a little more information to go on. But without even the transporters available and no accurate sensor readings, they were rapidly running out of useful options. I wonder. Picard frowned a little. Mr. Worf, open hailing frequencies. There was a decidedly notable pause before Worf rumbled, Aye, sir. Opening hailing frequencies. Ring, 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 ring. Huh? Oh, the phone still works. Ow! There were some muttered Gallifrey curses as the doctor hopped on one foot across the control platform after rather thoroughly smashing his toes on his toolbox, sending the contents scattered in all directions. Be right there! Don't hang up! We're hailing a wooden box, Riker pointed out softly. A wooden box without any power readings. Well, something must be keeping the occupant alive, number one, Picard replied, shaking his head. It can't hurt to try. Suddenly, the channel clicked, and suddenly a slightly breathless voice came on. A slightly breathless and very British voice. Hello! Clearing his throat, Picard climbed to his feet, tugging at his uniform shirt as he spoke. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation starship Voyager. To whom am I speaking? Oh, pleased to meet you. Not familiar with that ship. I'm the Doctor. The Doctor? Riker and Picard exchanged glances before the captain asked the next obvious question. Doctor who? Just the Doctor. The voice faded for a little bit, becoming a mutter. Every single time they asked that. The silence that followed was gaping. Picard was an accomplished diplomat with a sharp mind and a skilled tongue, but even then he was more than a little flabbergasted with the sudden appearance of an old blue police box in the middle of interstellar space, apparently capable of housing a single British individual, despite the fact that it was made of wood. Scans of your box. It's not a box! The voice interjected, sounding more than a little offended. I mean, all right, it looks like a box. Is shaped like a box, has things in it that like a box would, but it's not a box. It's a TARDIS, my TARDIS, my box shape, but not box TARDIS. Thank you, that clears up a good deal. Picard cleared his throat a second time before continuing. We have detected no power readings from your TARDIS. Do you require assistance? We could bring you aboard our ship until you make whatever repairs you require. Well, your readings are essentially correct. No power, no more life support, but there's enough oxygen left to last me 9 or 10 years. I'm sure you could find something out. I'm sure I could figure something out by then. The voice mused before becoming cheerful again. But that would be unbearably boring. So I'm gladly accept your offer for assistance, Captain. I'd come aboard myself, but, well, as you can see, I'm not currently blessed with a tremendous amount of mobility or light. Don't suppose you have room aboard your vessel for my TARDIS? Well, Picard replied dryly, I think we can find space for it. We'll tractor into our shuttle bay. We'll have you aboard shortly. Greatly obliged, Captain. See you shortly. Indeed, Picard out. A silent gesture towards Tactical was greeted with a nod, and Worf began the methodical task of tractoring the strange knot box into the main shuttle bay. As they waited, Picard shifted a little bit closer to Riker, lowering his voice as he folded his arms across his chest. Thoughts, number one? Interesting day, Riker offered ruefully. Show regime, Picard agreed, slightly sighing as he considered their options. They had a mission to complete, but he was reluctant to leave the area without a more thorough search, just in case it bore any other oddities, ideally something that could shed light on what was happening. Begin a sensor sweep of the area. See if there's anything out there else that's drifting. If we can't find anything within the vicinity, resume course to Alcheron 5. Aye, sir. Mr. Data, Mr. Worf, Counselor, with me, Picard announced, and the trio fell into step behind him as he moved to the turbolift. Time to greet our new guest. Commander, you have the bridge. As Sensor suggested, I am detecting a life form within the structure, Data said, eyes flittering around the tricor's display. However, the readings are extremely erratic. I am unable to offer any information as to the interior, only that the outer shell does appear to be made of wood. They had assembled in the shuttle bay only a few moments ago, with a pair of security guards posted just outside the doors. Worf was the only other one armed, however, and despite his requests, Picard told him to keep it holstered. No one had tried to directly touch the strange box yet, but as the seconds ticked past, they couldn't help but wonder when the door suddenly flew open with great enthusiasm. Within, there was only darkness, the shadows too thick to offer any idea as to the interior. A half a second later, the occupant stepped out, adjusting his bow tie, straightening his suspenders, and tugging at the hem of his coat in a gesture that would cause Troy and Worf's eyes to flicker briefly to Picard. Right, hello! Slipping out of the box, the man tugged the door shut and paused to straighten his jacket again, tugging at the sleeves, and then scurrying over to greet the welcoming party. Oh, sorry about the wait. Hard time finding the door in the dark. Must have skinned my knees 5 times before I found where I left my screwdriver. Jacket pocket, as it turns out. Really have to keep track of these things. So I take it you're the captain, then? He finished, smiling brightly, his attention squarely on Picard. Picard, who opened his mouth to speak when the newcomer had emerged, had only gaped at the seemingly normal human in outdated clothing, and his speech hadn't exactly been restored by the man's rambling monologue. Still, when the man finally stopped talking, Picard found his enough inner equilibrium to reply. I am Captain Picard, he replied cautiously, half turning to gesture to the others. May I introduce my Chief of Security, Lieutenant Worf, my second officer, Lieutenant Commander Data, and ship's counselor, Deanna Troy. The man's attention wandered from the captain, not towards the other 3 occupants, as he hardly afforded them a glance, but instead to the shuttle bay itself, his brow furrowing in obvious interest. Pleasure, right pleasure. Wonderful architecture. Very roomy in here. Can't put my finger on the design style. Handshakes were administered, first to Picard, then to Troy. When he reached Data, however, he paused, frowning a little, and he squinted at the android. Odd, curious eyes. Lifting the android's clasped hand mid-shake, he gave it an experimental sniff, and then brightened. Various tripolymer composite multipallium cobalt alloys. Releasing his hand, he licked his own palm, smacking his lips before adding, bioplast sheeting, brilliant artificial life form. Love these. Always nice to have a conversation with someone who understands half of what I'm saying most of the time. Pleasure to meet you very, very so much. All of you. I'm the doctor, as you've probably heard. And he had moved to the last person in line, but as he clasped Worf's hand and craned his head to consider the scowling security chief, he paused. He didn't seem to be perturbed by the somewhat unfriendly expression, but the face itself did cause him some concern. What are you? Worf stiffened a little at the question, obviously uncertain whether or not to be insulted, but the genuine confusion in the man's eyes, to say nothing of the fact that his commanding officer was in the room, kept him from reacting unfavorably, instead muttering, I am a Klingon. The doctor nodded along agreeably, then blinked. A what? Worf's lips curled a little as he all but growled. A Klingon. A Klingon? He didn't try to look confused now. He looked downright disturbed, eyes narrowing. Right, never heard of them. That's odd. Now that the proper introductions have been made, Captain Picard said slowly, perhaps you could enlighten us on just what you were doing out here. Right, yes, the man muttered. Very important who I am, where I'm from, but Klingon? Suddenly, in a flurry of movement, the stranger yanked out a metallic wand and before anyone could react, aimed it straight at the imposing security chief. Just as Worf lifted his phaser, though, the device's green crystal-tipped glowed, buzzed, and seemingly nothing happened. It was that absence of effect that kept the security team from opening fire, but the man didn't seem in any way bothered by it, simply snapping his wrist. The wand lengthened slightly, revealing a tiny display on that he studied solemnly, expression grim. Never seen this biological design before. The stranger mused, and then aimed the wand in Picard's direction. Once more it buzzed a peculiar sound, but as Worf reached out to seize the doctor's wrist, Picard motioned for him to stand down, correctly guessing at what the odd fellow's intentions were. Once more the doctor's wrist flicked back once the scan was finished, and his eyes feverishly studied the miniature display. Well, you're human, at least. Artificial heart, incredible. You must be killer at poker, and you... A third time the device buzzed, this time in Troy's direction. The readings only seemed to further trouble him. Not... Human, I mean, not entirely. I've never seen... What are you? Troy was all but buffeted by the waves of worry, frantic confusion, almost fear from this strange man, rising higher with every moment, so she kept her voice as calm and as gentle as she could. I am half Betazoid. Betazoid. He whirled around at a glance at the TARDIS, then whirled back to the increasingly uncomfortable group. Never heard of it. All right, a room of humans and two races I've never heard of. This is a first. Ever. His brain suddenly switched tracks. What year is it? If you mean by a standard Terran calendar, the year is 2368. Troy explained, but rather than settle the strange man, it only seemed to fluster him all the more. No, this can't be right. The doctor's eyes flicked back and forth as he took a half step back, looking increasingly like a caged animal with each passing moment. This can't possibly be 2368. I know 2368 like the back of my hand. Had lunch with some very prominent people in 2368, and this most certainly is not. Unless... When the doctor trailed off, he glanced back toward the blue box. Picard tried to urge him along. Unless? Oh, no, this is even worse than I thought. The entire group stiffened a little, but Picard took a step closer, both hands lifted as if the strange man were brandishing a weapon instead of whatever the hell that was. You're obviously upset about something, Picard said slowly, carefully, but if you could just explain... The doctor suddenly laughed. It was a brief, almost high-pitched, decidedly agitated giggle. His hands flicked outward in a helpless shrug. Once again, the entire group tensed as the strange madman with his strange blue box glanced around the shuttle bay, his teeth clenched, breaths passing in few sharp grasps before he replied, Well, I'm not technically supposed to be here.